Welcome back from the break. Let's carry on with our lesson. Okay, so we were looking at the theories of evolution. We've had a look at Lamarck, we've had a look at Darwin, and now we're going to have a look at punctuated equilibrium, and we're going to have a look at artificial selection. All right, so we're first going to compare the differences between Lamarck or Lamarckism and Darwinism, and it's very important that we do know the difference. So the first difference we're going to have a look at is the makeup of a population. And a population in Lamarck's theory, or under Lamarck's theory, he believed that they were all the organisms were the same. So they were all born with exactly the same characteristic, and there was no variation. Whereas if we have a look at Darwin's theory, we see that members have similar characteristics, but there is variation amongst the offspring. All right, and then in the second difference, we have a look at how the population changed or the species changed. So it was the transformation of the population. So under Lamarck's theory, he believed, or he said, that individuals are able to transform during a lifetime. Okay, so they would then develop a characteristic, and once they had acquired that characteristic, they would then be able to, in their lifetime, pass it on to the next generation. Whereas Darwinism states that the population transforms and not individuals. That's very important. So we need to remember that it's not individuals, but population. Because remember, we can't change our genetics. So once an individual's genetics is established, then it cannot be changed. So that has to do with genetics. Okay, and it's the population that transforms over time. And as I said, it's only through genetic means. All right, and then the last, or the third point of the difference between Lamarck and Darwin is the mechanism of change. Okay, so if we have a look at Lamarck's theory, he said that individuals choose which traits to pass on to their offspring. And those changes then are directed to meet survival. So in other words, the organism decides, for example, the giraffes, it's the long neck that they would like to pass on to their offspring because they are then able to feed off the tall trees. Whereas in Darwinism, the environment exercises selective pressure. And remember when I went through Darwinism, we said that it's nature or the environment that brings about the factors that select. And that causes change in the population. So there is variation that exists, okay? And that happens because of genetics and because of mutations. So not all offspring. And because most organisms reproduce sexually, and that is why we have genetic variation. So with the formation of the gametes, as well as the fertilization and random mating, we end up that there will always be variation in a population. All right, so now we're going to have a look at another theory or another model of evolution, and that is called punctuated equilibrium. And earlier I said, let's have a look. So punctuated means that there are breaks or gaps in something, and then equilibrium is sort of stasis. Okay, so if we have a look at this theory, it was first put forward by two scientists, Aldridge and Gould, and you can see it was more recently formulated. It was formulated in 1972, and they had the benefit of the fossil record. So what they did is they studied the fossil record, and what they observed is that the fossil record gave them a very different picture of evolution. So Darwin and other theories and theories before that we called gradualism. So what happened is organisms slowly changed over time. And we call that theory gradualism, and they were now offering a theory that was different, or an opposite explanation. Okay, so they believed that the fossil record, so they said no, when they studied the fossil record, it did not support the theory of gradual evolution, but rather that there were long periods of time where there was stasis. So in other words, nothing changed. Okay, so the organisms remained more or less the same for long periods of time, and this then would then be punctuated. So there was very little evolutionary change during that time, and then occasional rapid formation of new species. So it would be a much shorter period of time. Because here you can see it's the long periods of 4 to 10 million years, whereas in very short, between 5,000 and 50,000 years, there would be rapid change in species. So let's have a look at a diagram. Okay, so here we can see the first diagram at the top, this one here. It shows us a change in birds. You can see specifically in the beak of the birds, and as time goes by, you can see here's time as it goes past, so the beaks gradually change until they are what they are at the end. So that was an example, or this is an example of gradualism. And according to the punctuated equilibrium, they say, no, this isn't the way what the fossil record tells us. The fossil record shows us that here we have an organism, and you can see, or the bird, and you can see its beak, and then we have a very short period. Here you can see there's a very short period of time where there was rapid change. So the beaks went from that to this, where they have changed quite rapidly. And then there's long periods of time where there's very little change again, and then we're going to find rapid periods of change again. All right, so this one is gradualism, and then this one obviously would be of punctuated equilibrium. Okay, that's all we have time for today. See you next time.